Welcome to the New School and tonight's event, Collateral Learning Enhances the ESL Classroom with Sandy Elbaum. I'm Caitlin Morgan, Director of English Language Studies at the New School, and we are so pleased to be partnering with Heinle Cengage Learning to bring you an exciting and hopefully, and most importantly, useful evening of grammar teaching ideas and inspiration. No matter whether it's your first year or your 20th year teaching, we are always on the hunt to find more and better ways to teach grammar, to make it meaningful, readily applied, fun, and memorable. Context, we know, is key to teaching grammar, and now with the internet, smart rooms, smartphones, smart boards, and the media-rich environment we live in, we can conjure more context in our classroom than ever before. How can we best navigate these myriad choices to promote learning? Fortunately, we have Sandy Elbaum with us here tonight to provide some much appreciated guidance. Thank you so much, Sandy, for being here. And thank you to my colleagues at Heinle, Sherry Allen and Emily Stewart, for your collaborative efforts for this event. And a very special thank you to the newly retired, happily retired, Heinle sales rep, the legendary and most exuberant Stu Tuckfeld, whom I've had the pleasure, and many of you have had too, of knowing for so many years. Stu got the ball rolling with me last spring on this, and it's wonderful to have him here tonight, coming out of retirement to help out. And it's his birthday, no less. So that's commitment. What a Heinle at heart kind of guy. Thank you, Stu. Thank you so much for everything, for all the years. Thank you. And now to introduce our feature speaker, please welcome my colleague from Heinle Cengage Learning, Emily Stewart, Academic Marketing Manager for ESL.
I'm a little bit nervous. I've never used a microphone right in my face. I normally do the lavalier. As Caitlin said, I'm the Academic Marketing Manager with Heinle Cengage, and it's a pleasure to be here, and I want to thank you all for coming out of your busy schedules on a Monday night and taking time to watch a very inspirational presentation by Sandy Elbaum. And I'd like to introduce her and give you a little bit of a background information about Sandy, because she's a very special woman who has done a lot of important things and special things with ESL throughout her life. Starting from when she was just a little girl, Sandy had experience early on as an ESL teacher because she is a child of immigrants herself, so had to spend a lot of time translating and teaching her parents as she was learning English. So she, with this background, it inspired in her the ability and the need to teach others, and that connection with ESL students and people, immigrants from all over. So she started young, and then she did end up going into a career in teaching ESL and has taught for over 30 years, both at the secondary, higher education, school, all different levels. So she's seen it all and been to many, many different countries: Slovakia, the former Soviet Union, Mexico, Puerto Rico. So she's traveled a lot and has experienced a lot, and is still to this day very active, helping refugees who are coming to this country transition to this country. So she has a lot of that experience to this day to share with you all on how she helps them transition. And with that being said, I'd like to just read her acknowledgement which is in the book that you have, because it's truly inspirational and it really says a lot about Sandy herself. This new edition is dedicated to the millions of displaced people in the world. The U.S. is the new home to many refugees who survived unspeakable hardships in Burundi, Rwanda, Sudan, Burma, Bhutan, and other countries. Their resiliency in starting a new life and learning a new language is a tribute to the human spirit. So, with that being said, I'd like to introduce Sandy Elbaum for this presentation on grammar and collateral learning. Thank you very much.
Hi, and thank you for coming. Very often when I meet people for the first time, and they say, well, what do you do for a living? And I say, well, I'm an English teacher. And they say, oh, well, then I have to be careful with my grammar, don't I? And they start to worry about the I's and the me's and the who's and the whom's. And I said, no, no, I'm not that kind of an English teacher. I teach English as a second language. And can you imagine the next question? You probably have confronted this yourself. What's the next question they usually ask you? What language do you speak, or do you or do you speak Spanish? And I say, do you speak all those languages? And I said, of course, see, way, doc. I speak all those languages. But I think the next thing that people think about when I say I'm an English teacher is they think back to the time when they had to diagram sentences or do those kind of crazy little things that we had to do in elementary school, and they think that grammar is boring. And I'm here to tell you that grammar is boring. Okay, are you shocked? Okay. It's boring. So, I mean, I go, you go, he goes. I mean, there's nothing really exciting. It's not like history where you're telling a story, you know? You have to have something to really spike up grammar and make it interesting. So what I've devised, my methodology is to combine grammar with collateral learning, to think if you're learning something else while you're learning grammar, that would be a great thing, and that would, and especially if it's something that piques your interest. So I'm here to show you what many classes that I've taken have looked like this. Many ESL classes that I have visited have looked like this. And I'm hoping that nobody in this room has a class that looks like this. I think the only one in this class who is interested in anything is the cow, because it's relevant to the cow's life. Why there's a cow in an English class, I have no idea. Okay, now, when I first started teaching ESL, a typical grammar book looked, I don't know if you all go back to the days of Lotto and Dixon, and if anybody is old enough, and they all kind of looked like this at that time. He is late, is he late? Where is he? You are here, are you here? Where are you? I am a student, am I a student? Who am I? I am a student, am I a student? Makes absolutely no sense. I don't know if anybody was here for the Scott Thornbury. I saw the YouTube, and I was just so impressed with it because I love the one where I am touching your nose. Do you remember that? Do you remember that? ESL sentences that are never used anyplace. So I am a student. So, and then back in the old Dixon Lotto days, and I shouldn't put these guys down because, well, it was their bread and butter back then. They didn't know any better back then, let's just say that. They had exercises that looked like this, which was just the simple fill-in-the-blank exercises. And what does the student learn from doing these exercises? They learn to fill in blanks. Is this exercise interesting? Well, obviously not. Is this exercise going to wake up the taxi driver in your class who's been driving a taxi for 14 hours and now he comes to your class, he or she? Okay, probably not. And if you ask me, this exercise is geared more to the teacher than it is to the student because the dirty word in education is easy to grade. Yeah, so we want to stay away from that sort of thing. So I'm going to give you a little joke that one of my students actually told me, and it's something that we can use to teach an ESL lesson with. Let's put it that I'm in Chicago, and I have a friend visiting me from Venezuela. And my friend is downtown, and my friend calls me on the phone, and she says, I'm lost. And I say, you're downtown, am I right? And she says, I think so. Are you near a bridge? No, I'm not. Are the streets wide? Yes, they are. Are the buildings tall? Yes, they are. Is the train nearby? No, it isn't. And I finally say, okay, take your phone, go to the street signs, tell me the street signs, I will come and pick you up. So my friend goes to the street signs and says, I'm at the corner of Walk and Don't Walk. So, it's probably happened to me in many countries. Okay, so we're going to take the original grammar explanation that I showed you, and I am going to compare it to something that you can do with the verb to be. You can say, instead of saying he is late, is he late, you can say he is downtown, is he alone? Why is he downtown? You are lost. Are you worried? Where are you? I'm near a bridge. Am I in the right place? Where am I? So that can be used for teaching the verb to be. Cool, huh? And so we go from something which is an illogical sequence, going back to the Scott Thornberry, I'm touching your nose kind of thing. He is late, is he late? Nobody would ever say that kind of thing. To he is downtown, is he alone? Somebody might say that kind of sequence. So we go to a logical sequence from an illogical sequence. So in my book, Grammar and Context, which you all have a copy of, by the way, it's a 4-part series. You all have the top of the 4-part series that has a number 3, but there's a basic that goes beneath number 1. I believe that context is very important. You have to wake up your students, and context also gives you a lot of extra things. Anybody want to call out why context is so important? If you believe it so?
Well,
Yes.
Well, meaning, the grammar has to have, the use of the language has to have meaning.
Yes, the use of the language has to have meaning. Anybody else want to shout something out? You remember it because it's related to something. So these are some of the reasons that I have for using a context. When a successful language learner learns language holistically, to communicate, we need to communicate about something. I am late, am I late is not communicating about anything. The context reinforces vocabulary. So you got a lot of recycling of vocabulary within the same lesson. And studies have shown that it isn't enough to show somebody vocabulary once, but you have to have various context, related context, repetition of these contexts so that the vocabulary becomes more ingrained. Other than grammar teachers, few people are interested in just naked grammar. You're all interested in grammar, but ask any American friend of yours, are you interested in grammar? And they're going to say, huh? You know, I don't like grammar. I'm not good in grammar. They don't realize how well they know grammar. So their instinct is, I don't like grammar. I don't know grammar very well. And for a lot of people, to teach ESL, to teach grammar, especially to students who have never really studied grammar in their own languages, it's boring and intimidating. And another really compelling reason for context to be so important is context promotes collateral learning. Now, unlike collateral damage, collateral learning is something good, okay? About 10 years ago in American Educator, which is a wonderful educational magazine journal, I read a story that I thought was just so compelling, and it's on your hand, a little bit of it is on your handout. It's a longish piece. But Edward O. Wilson, who is a biologist, a scientist, believes that everything should be taught in the form of a story, everything. And his compelling reason for doing so is, he says, everyone loves a good story, especially gossip, which he mentions too in the article. Facts presented in stories as opposed to lists are much easier to remember. Likewise, facts that stir up intense emotions are quickly and easily stored in the brain. Storytelling is not something we just happen to do. It's something we virtually have to do if we want to remember anything at all. I think this is a very important quote, and even before I read this article, I started writing Grammar and Context in 1983, I believe. First edition came out in 1986, and I just instinctively knew this, and it was so fabulous for me to read this article because it kind of validated what I thought I always knew, but I never really had much validation for, and a lot of other textbooks were not doing this sort of thing at that time. So I started to think, well, what do students need to learn besides English as a second language? What are the things that usually come up? Shout something out, because I know you know the answers to these questions. How to survive in a city. How to survive in a city. I'm repeating just so how to shop, consumer things. How to be polite. Mm-hmm. How to make a doctor's appointment. And as Emily mentioned, you know, when I was a child, I had to explain a lot of these things to my immigrant parents who didn't know. I had to help them along. Children of immigrants often parent their own parents. And very often the students that you have, if you have adult students, their children are helping to parent them too. So rather than giving the burden to the child of the immigrant or the refugee, we can provide it for them. So some of the things that they need to learn are culture, customs, that was when you talk about politeness, survival skills, you were talking about shopping, how to make a doctor's appointment, information about the United States, some of the current trends, consumerism, and current events. And all of this is what I call collateral learning. And so I combine grammar with all of these things, and if you leaf through this book after you leave, you'll see how I do that. And I think it's important for the grammar, for the context to come from a variety of disciplines. First off, some of these people are going to go on to college, credit courses, and they're going to, let's say, study sociology or nursing, and they should be exposed to a variety of disciplines. Also, different people are interested, even if they're not going on to higher education, different people are interested in different things, and so you'll kind of hit everybody if you have history, geography, different types of things. Context can teach culture and customs, and I'm going to give you some examples about how we do that. One of the things I like to use are Americans and their pets, naming customs, the importance of being on time, and some wedding customs, and I'll give you some examples. Here's a little page from book 2 of Grammar and Context, which is about pets. So rather than just giving a bunch of simple present tense sentences, it's all in context, and you have the highlighted words are all simple present tense, and it talks about the relationship that Americans have with their pets. But you don't have to stop there. I mean, there are a lot of fun things that you can do that are beyond the book. And so what is cultural about pets? What isn't cultural about pets? What are things that Americans do that they don't do in other countries? Bury them, treat them like a member of family, dress them, sleep with them. Okay, you can actually, yes, you can have them wag hang their tongues out the door window, drive the car practically. So here are some of the things that I've come up with, some of which you've mentioned. We have Halloween costumes for pets. Cemeteries, somebody mentioned burying. Oh, I just passed a hotel. I just came from another city where I passed a pet hotel. I thought it was a hotel where owners could stay with their pets, but it was just pets. Okay, there are restaurants for pets. Pets live indoors. That may not be true in a lot of countries. Dogs and cats often sleep with their owners. Anybody here have a dog or cat that sleeps with you? Fess up? Okay. And we have groomers for pets, and we pick up after our dogs. If anybody's ever gone to Paris or Buenos Aires, they know it isn't done in a lot of places. So you can get, by discussing all of these things, and they're fun, they're just lots and lots of fun, and you bring in pictures like this, it makes it even more fun. You can create a simple present tense lesson based on this. And I often ask students, or if you have a smart classroom where you can project the internet, you can go to PetSmart.com. You can have your students look at all the things that can be done for pets, and they can come up with their own sentences of things that they find bizarre. And now, this being Halloween, I will show you some of my favorites. And by the way, I'm going to mention right now, before I forget, that I make my presentation available to anybody who attends these. So because you may want to use some of these visuals in class, and you don't have to invent the wheel, you can add to it, you can modify it. I don't care what you do with it. So if you send me an email, which is at the top of my emails at the top of your handout, I would be happy to send you the presentation. And it is in 4 parts because it's too large to send as one email, so I had to chop it up into 4 parts. So we have these Halloween costumes for pets. I love this scaredy cat here. Hot dog. Pugadile. Bad dog. I wonder what he did wrong. And Kitty Gaga. We don't want to slight the cat owners over here. And one of my favorites is Hello Kitty, dressed up as Hello Kitty. I mean, these things are really, you bring these things into class, and your students start laughing, and they start becoming more engaged, and you're teaching the simple present tense. Another thing I use is, for American customs, is I use American names, naming customs. And I use this to teach possessive forms, and I'll show you how I do that. Okay, I do a little thing called What's in a Name. And it could be a first day activity if you need a first day activity, just people getting to know each other, or if you're doing a lesson on possessive forms and pronouns, personal pronouns, object pronouns. And the way you do it is you write your full name on the chalkboard, whiteboard, smartboard, whatever board. I still say blackboard. That shows you how old I am. And you tell how you got each part of your name. And I'm going to demonstrate it. And and if you do it in class, it's really good if you demonstrate it and then other people come in and join you. Okay, so I'll tell you. My name is Sandra N. Elbaum. And notice what I have in bold here, or I have an offset color. So this would be the focus of the lesson. My first name is Sandra. My friends call me Sandy. My parents gave me my grandmother's name. Her name was Sura. She died before I was born. They thought Sura was too European sounding a name, so they Americanized it to Sandra. Today, who knows, they'd probably call me Sundance today or something like that with the way names are today. So if you demonstrate that in your class, everybody has a chance to get up to the chalkboard, the whiteboard, and write their name. And when you do it in a mixed cultural environment, you will be so surprised. You will learn so much about the cultures of these people. I work a lot with Burundian people right now as refugees. I adopted a Burundian family, and everybody in the family actually has different last names, or they started out that way. And they give them a last name like, he was born on a rainy day. That's the last name, like John, he was born on a rainy day kind of thing. So the family that I deal with is Desiree, his last name is Nakarutimana, but it's no one is higher than God. So they just put a sentence together, and that's your last name. Sounds a little bit about Native Americans, doesn't it? Like, yeah. So you find out an awful lot about people and about their cultures by doing the names. Okay, another thing I do is I like to talk about weddings and the customs of weddings. Well, what's different about American weddings as far as you know? Shout something out. Expensive. Somebody here just got married or just paid for a daughter's wedding. Anything else?
They're shorter.
Shorter? Shorter than what?
Than some other cultures.
Oh.
The festivities are.
Oh, that's right. They can go on for days and days in some countries. That's true. Yes. Anything else?
I was going to say.
Bride only wears one dress.
Bride only wears one dress as opposed to where? What country are you thinking of where the bride wears more than one dress?
In a lot of Asian cultures, they
Yes.
change garbs.
Yes. Okay.
Of course, of the ceremony.
Yes, they change garbs. Okay. Somebody else has a suggestion?
Well, I was saying they're long, like 3 days, and it's, but then you're saying they're shorter, so. Well, the festivities. To me, they last too long.
To you? Okay. You just paid for a daughter's wedding, right? Okay. Here are some of the things that I think many of our students find is different. There's a gift registry. We ask for gifts. That may not be true in most countries. It may be changing as time goes on. People are becoming more Americanized, but I've had students that are absolutely appalled that you would ask for your own gift. Destination weddings. Yes, let's all go to Tahiti, spend a fortune, so you can celebrate my daughter's wedding. Reply cards. I've been to weddings where anybody in Mexico, anybody and everybody can come. Bring your friends. There's no limit. We have a specific number of guests. There's a custom about where to bring or send presents. Return receipts. You get to return the third toaster or whatever it is. Thank you cards, and even same-sex marriages. These are things that may, and that may be not all of them, but some of them are different. You can have your students go to weddingchannel.com. By the way, on your handout, I have almost every reference I have on the back side. I have almost every reference of a website that I use is listed there so that you can easily find it too. Okay, if they go to weddingchannel.com, they can find out the types of things that people ask for in a wedding. You can develop a whole lesson about household items, if that's a vocabulary thing. He wants, he needs, he asks for, blah, 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 about the different household items, and it would be a very good vocabulary lesson. A wedding video is also a very appropriate thing to bring to class. If any of your students have a DVD from their wedding or their parents' wedding or brother's wedding or whatever, it makes a very, very good way of teaching the present continuous tense. The present continuous tense, or some people call it progressive, is a very dead tense because you want to make it alive. You say, okay, guys, what's happening? I'm standing, talking, you're sitting, listening, he's filming back there, and there's not a lot of, and even standing and sitting and wearing are kind of static kind of things. They're not anything that has any motion to them. So you bring in a wedding video, and a student now gets to show his part, hopefully not all 3 days of it, hopefully, maybe 15 minutes of the most important part of the wedding. And the student now can say, she's carrying this, they're drinking this. And now I once had a woman from Bangladesh in my class, and almost all my Soviet, well, Ukrainians, whatever, but Soviet people during Soviet days. And they were just amazed. And the Bangladeshi woman had never met her husband before the wedding, and they were just absolutely appalled. And they had a million questions, like, why is she looking down? Why is she looking so sad? So a lot of question formation came up about something that's real. I am talking, you are sitting is boring. As I said, grammar can be boring. Bring in the wedding video, and you've got something really interesting to talk about. And it's also very cultural. I think it's rich, and it's also, let's say if you had a class of almost all Hispanics and you had one person from Poland, I mean, it might be really interesting for that person to bring in the video. Okay, another thing that's cultural is time. What's cultural about time? What isn't cultural about time? When is it necessary to be on time? When is it acceptable to be late? When should we be early? Are some people habitually late? Do most Americans wear a watch? I heard on NPR nowadays people don't wear watches anymore. They just carry their cell phones. Okay, so the sale of watches has gone down. Now, let's say you're teaching a very basic class, and you're teaching what time is it? It is 9 o'clock. What time is it? Well, something more interesting is to go to the world clock on the internet. And now you can have sentences like, what time is it in California? What time is it in Istanbul? Is your watch fast or slow? Are you usually on time? Is it important to be on time? You have a lesson about B, you have a lesson about time. It's in a very basic level. Do we have any copies of Basic book back there? Do we have Basic? You can see how I do it in the very basic book. I'm getting Sherry's shaking her head. So it's more interesting that, oh, I have to tell you this, my grandchildren, who are actually my Burundian grandchildren, they're Americanized now. I told them a couple of weeks ago, we split up, and I said, meet me back at my car at 10 to 4. And they said, tell us in real time. I said, what do you mean real time? 10 to 4. They said, tell us in real time. I said, what's real time? Like 3:25. They only know digital clocks. So. That's interesting, too. Okay, somebody mentioned before survival skills are really necessary. What are some of the survival skills? Tenants' rights, finding a job, filling out forms, and shopping. And when you teach students survival skills, you're really empowering them. They become less dependent on their children to figure these things out for them, and less dependent on you, and they can get things done better. So here's a survival skill, going to the supermarket, and we have free samples, free bagging, automatic checkout, unit pricing, all those kind of things. And let's look at the kind of grammar we can derive from that. You can do a lesson on B. It is expensive, it is cheap, it is in the first aisle, it is in the second aisle. You can do things singular and plural. How many boxes are on there? Boxes, loaves of bread, bananas. You can do count and non-count nouns, and you can do there is and there are. For example, is there a cashier in this line? No, there isn't a cashier. It's an automatic checkout. So all the cultural and survival things come out, and they're practicing the grammar patterns. I often use peapod.com when I want to teach count and non-count nouns, and you can say. Hard time reading. What does it say? Oh, what's on sale? How much is the ice cream? So you can start to categorize which of these things are count nouns, which of these things are non-count nouns. Is anybody familiar with Peapod? It's a home shopping site. If you don't want to go out and shop, I don't know if they have it in all localities, but you can still find it online whether they have it or not. So some people can order. You have it Fresh Direct? Okay, so use that as your website. Excuse me. Okay, filling out forms. When I used to have, before the Soviet Union fell apart, most of my students were from the Soviet Union, And they always told me that there were more forms to fill out in the United States than there were in the Soviet bureaucratic. They said we're far more bureaucratic than the Soviet Union. So what kind of grammar would come from filling out forms? Somebody guess what kind of grammar? A lot of things can come out. No wrong answers. How do you like that? Anything come to mind? Infinitives, give me an example. You need to do this, it's important to do that, something like that? Okay, anything else?
Well, why did you come here, or why are you applying for this, to do this, to do that?
Okay, but I'm talking specifically about the form. Yes? Oh, I heard good answer. Imperatives? Yes, I'll take another good answer. Yes, very good. Okay, those are the things that come to my mind. Imperatives or modals, very good. And let me show you. Here's a Social Security Administration application, which many of your students probably have to fill out at some point. And if you look at all the circled things, you've got all these imperatives. And it's also important to point out, I noticed that in forms, they never say don't, they always say do not, which is a much more formal way. You know, there you have a lesson in imperatives. Or you can also transform it into modals, like you should do this, you shouldn't do that, you must do this, okay? Another survival skill is jobs and careers. Can you think of any grammar that would go with jobs and careers? Anybody want to take a guess?
Simple past.
Simple past, give me an example of simple past.
Well, when you're filling out your resume, you have to talk about your history, your job history.
Yes, you have to, okay, simple past applies to job history. You can also use present perfect because in an interview, the interviewer will say, have you had any experience? How long have you worked at such and such a place? So in Grammar and Context 3, I use it for present perfect, but I'm sure you can find other really appropriate uses. And so students need to know how to write a resume, how to prepare for an interview, body language during an interview. It's very hard for some people to sell themselves. They find it a very foreign kind of thing to do and very uncomfortable. Appropriate clothing for an interview, punctuality, selling yourself, and following up on an interview. I also use the Occupational Outlook Handbook. It's all, the website is listed on your handout, don't worry about it. And here's one for computer systems analyst. I used to use one for ESL teachers, and it was so depressing. I stopped using it, but anyway. So is anybody here familiar with the Occupational Outlook Handbook? Yes? Yes? Okay. It's great for students that are trying to decide, younger students especially, who are trying to decide on a career. You can guide them through this. It's very helpful for them to look at this. And they get the future. They get the future of this career. Will this profession grow in the future? So if somebody is interested, for example, in becoming a, I don't know, whatever thing has been outsourced these days, you might say, well, let's see, will there be jobs for this kind of person in the future, for this career in the future? For nurses, they always seem to have jobs in the future and anything having to do with care of geriatrics, it seems, and anything that can't be outsourced. Okay, so another thing that you're going to get in the Occupational Outlook Handbook is the nature of the work. And if you take a look at all the things I've circled, I don't know how clear it is way in the back, what tense is coming up here? Simple present tense. Even if the student doesn't understand everything about this, he would be more, if he's in need of a job, if he's in need of selecting a career, he's going to be motivated to try to understand what these words mean. Even if he doesn't remember them a little bit later on, but he's still going to be motivated to try to learn what they mean. And he gets a sense of how the simple present tense is used. Okay? So another thing is survival skill is renting an apartment. Any grammar that you can think of that might come up when we talk about terms of a lease, negotiating the lease, number of people who can be in the apartment, heating problems, pest problems, pets. Okay. Conditional, give me an example of conditional. Any?
If I do this, will I have to do that?
Good. If I do this, will I have to do that? Somebody mentioned modals. And that's what I kind of look at it as, is a modal lesson.
There are a lot of yes, no questions.
Well, it's always good to, oh yeah, you can,
Apartment, right? A lot of yes, no questions.
yes, no question, especially.
Our pets allowed.
Exactly. It's a great way to practice, to do a little role play. One person is the landlord. Is that what you call them here in your town here? Okay. And the other person is the potential tenant, and they can do the role play, and then you can practice questions. And I don't know about you, but my students never seem to master questions. Yeah. For example, where lives your brother, that kind of thing, or why you don't speak Spanish or something like that. So if you, I pulled this out of a tenant's book, probably in Chicago, and you notice how many modals are there. And it's a good time to tell your students, don't use must all the time. It's usually in official documents, legal documents. It's not something like, I'm tired, I must go to sleep. They tend to overuse that kind of must. So you can point out to them that this is where you would most likely see must, and in ordinary speech we would probably say have to. Okay, there's also another thing students need to learn is consumerism. Buying a used car, coupons, rain checks, rebates, telemarketing. By the way, everything I mentioned here is in one of the 4 books, these topics. So take a look at that when you have a chance. This also empowers your students. What about this lesson where I pulled up 3 cars here that are for sale, 3 used cars? What do you think you could do with that? There you go. You can, if you're doing 2 cars, you can do a comparative lesson. If you're doing 3 cars, you can do, or more, a superlative lesson. So you can take your students to, what site is this? Is this Kelley Blue Book? Or, yeah. Yeah, these are dead shots. These are just screenshots, so they're not live. Okay, kbb.com, kelleybluebook.com. They can pick out 3 cars that they might be interested. You can assign one student to pick out a car. You can assign 3 students to pick out cars that they're interested in buying, have them sit together, get this information, compare the cars. Another website you can go to is fueleconomy.gov. Don't bother writing these things down. They're all on the back of your sheet. And you can compare not only the cars themselves, but you can compare fuel economy. So somebody says, well, I'd really like to get that Hummer, and you find out that it's like 0 miles per gallon, so that might change their mind about buying the Humvee. And it's a really good way of informing them about that these things are, a lot of students don't know that all of this information is available. By now, most of our students are pretty proficient in internet use, but they're probably just tooling around the things that they're very used to, like Facebook, and may not ever confront these kinds of things. So it's nice to point them out. I also have a lot of things that I think are just plain old contemporary and interesting things. I mentioned Facebook, the fact that this is a 24/7 society, Twitter, of course. Most of your students probably are already using these things, and Groupon, which I'm going to mention a little bit later. But one of the things is Freecycle. Has anybody here heard of Freecycle? One person? Oh, okay, we got about 5, maybe 8 or 9 people have heard of Freecycle. Okay. I have a story about Freecycle in one of the books. Let me explain to you what it is. Freecycle is a website that was developed by some guys who decided that too much stuff goes into landfill, and I have stuff that you may need, you have stuff that I may need. I want to clean out my closet. My grandpa just died, and we got to get rid of all of his stuff. Okay, how do you get rid of it? You put it on Freecycle. You join by your locale. I don't know if in New York City, it may be broken down into the boroughs or whatever. In Chicago, there's probably, with all the suburbs, there's probably at least 10, 12 different Freecycles that you can join in the Chicago area. And you list things as wanted or offer. And it's not an exchange. It's not I give you my guitar and you give me your boots. It's not like that at all. It's I have a guitar I never use anymore. I want to clean out my closet. I put it out there. You become part of a greater community of people who give and get and give and get. And a lot of your students probably need to get stuff. When I work with refugees, you know, they need a clock, they need a radio, they need a TV. Boy, is it easy to get a TV that's that size. The flat screens, you know, everybody's throwing their TVs out and getting the flat screen. So if I have a refugee that says I need a clock, I said I could probably get you one tomorrow, and I can. I just go on Freecycle, I say, and let me give you just a little bit of, if you plan on using Freecycle, let me give you a little tip. If you tell a little story about why you want it, you're more likely to get it. Because I often do, oh, is it a refugee that just arrived in Chicago a week ago? And they have an empty apartment and they really need this. You know, like 30 people come up with a clock for me, you know. Obviously, things that are more modern and more, you know, up to date, like a DVD player or a Blu-ray player, you're not going to find that very much on Freecycle. But you can get people TVs and things like that. Now, what kind of grammar can I derive out of this? I derive adjective clauses. And let me show you how I do this. I boxed these two things. Wanted, a noise-reducing, canceling headphones, working or not. This is an actual page from Freecycle. I didn't make any of this up. I have an autistic son who's very sensitive to noise, and we have to avoid certain situations, blah, blah, blah. Second one, offer, pony backpack. Lightweight, tan fur, small child's backpack, never used. The next one, offer, child sheet music case, personalized Katie. Okay, let me show you how I turn that into a lesson. Oops, went too far. Freecycler has a son who is autistic, adjective clauses. A Freecycler has a daughter whose name is Katie. A Freecycler has a backpack that he's never used. They've learned how to do the grammar, and they've learned how to get the things that they need. Isn't that a nice little package? Yeah. You know, I've done this presentation a number of times, and very often, even the people who are not coming for my presentation, but they might be the people filming it, or, you know, the ancillary people here, they say, oh, I use Freecycle, it was really great, you know. It's a great way I mean, I Freecycle at least once a week. At least once a week, I find something in my closet that I absolutely don't need. I have to tell you a little story, though, a little aside. The guys that started this, I don't know their names, but they were on NPR and they were interviewed, and they said, what was the most bizarre thing you ever saw advertised on Freecycle? And by the way, there are some regulations, no live animals, there are some regulations, you know, really. Although, I mean, you know, that's not where you want to get rid of your little kittens or anything like that. He said the most bizarre thing he ever saw was laundry lint. Somebody wanted pounds and pounds of laundry lint. Why? It was for an art project. Oh, yeah, okay, you're a step ahead. I mean, you know, I mean, I had a box of old buttons that all these mismatched buttons, and I mean, I put it on Freecycle, and about probably 10 or 15 people wanted them, and it was tough to make a decision. Everything from elementary school teachers who needed it for a project, you know. Yes.
About Freecycle.
Yes.
How does the transaction happen? You have to mail it to somebody?
Oh, that's a very good question. Very, very good question. It's anything you want it to be. What it usually is leaving something at the front door of your house, and then you don't have to let a stranger into your house. I have so many Freecyclers that I already know because we've traded so many things for so many years now that I'm happy to open the door, hand it to them, and, you know, say, hi, how are you? I once made the most bizarre one. The most bizarre exchange I ever made was the woman was coming up from, I live in Chicago, and she lives near the Wisconsin border, and she had to travel quite far to give me, or I had to travel quite far. So she said, I will meet you at a parking lot at the Jewel, which is our big grocery store there, which was halfway between where she lived and where I lived. And it was actually somebody who needed cameras to take to Uganda so that children of the street could take pictures of how their lives were. And I was collecting cameras for Uganda, and she had a lot of old cameras to give to me. So we pulled up in a parking lot next to each other. She handed me a paper bag. I said, thank you. I felt like it was a drug deal. But it's anything and everything, but the safest way is to leave it on your door, at your doorstep. Okay. Another thing that just occurred to me, I don't like Dancing with the Stars, but I was visiting a friend the other day, and rather than look at me, her head kept turning to dancing. It was the first time I ever saw it. You probably have all seen it, right? No? No? Okay. So it's something contemporary. A lot of your students have probably seen it. What can you do with it? Give me an example of a gerund. Dancing. There you go. That was an easy one. Okay, anything else? Describing the outfit, so you can get adjectives. Anything else? Questions. Okay, and what came up for me? What? Adverbs, for example, he's dancing gracefully, he's dancing awkwardly, that kind of thing. Okay, and what came up for me was comparisons. Who is a better dancer, which is a prettier costume, all kinds of things, and you can get a comparison lesson out of this. This just this morning, I was checking my email, and of course I get Groupon every day. Do you all know what Groupon is? You all have Groupon? And I just threw this one in at the last moment. So Groupon.com is not on your list because it was just something that occurred to me. And I thought, oh my God, okay, I'm a vegetarian, so there's this new vegan restaurant that's opening up in Chicago, $12, wow. So as I started, because now I'm thinking a lot about grammar because I'm here to talk about grammar, I started to think in terms of what this means grammatically. Anybody want to come up with anything? Or you want me to just tell you? Yeah. I'll just tell you, okay. What came up for me was modals, and I'll show you how. You don't have to pay full price with a Groupon. You can save money. You shouldn't wait, the deal ends tomorrow. And by the way, I came back to my room later and the deal was gone. I wanted that one and it was gone. You should read the fine print because there are all kinds of disclaimers and things like that. And you have to use the Groupon by February 2012. That's the specific Groupon that I just showed you. Okay, so I got a lot of modals out of that, a lot of mileage. And then you're teaching your students how to get something that, I don't know if a foreign student is into the Groupon thing, but it's kind of fun anyway. Next thing is, I like to bring in interesting people. And what is interesting to me may be different from what's interesting to you, but you'll find the grammar and content of people I consider interesting. And when I choose interesting people, I always look for things that are people overcoming the odds. I like stories like that, you know. And I also like immigrant and refugee stories of people that have been successful. Some famous, like Albert Einstein. The family I deal with, I have a story about them in the book. The refugees, Charlotte and Terrence from Burundi, I wrote a story about them. The Lost Boys of Sudan, I bet you some of you have them in your classes, right? Nobody has Lost Boys of Sudan? I'm shocked. I know they're in New York. And anyway, I'll show you how I do it. This one's such a no-brainer. You'll know what the grammar thing is. I love this story. And most people who have used this book comment about this story. The guy's name is George Dawson. Have you seen that? Where have you seen it? In my book. Did you? Do you like the story? Yes, let me tell this story of George Dawson. He had to work from a very, very young age, and he never had a chance to go to school, and he was 98 years old, and he decided he wanted to learn how to read. So he went to an adult learning center. He learned how to read. I don't know how well, but he learned how to read to his satisfaction. And he wrote a book called Life is So Good. And so it is a nice lesson in simple past tense. He died recently at the age of 103. And when I tell my students the story, I always say the moral of the story is learning to read can kill you, cause and effect. Okay? Okay. I have Lost Boys of Sudan, and I think that they're very fascinated. They have a very, very interesting story. I think it's book 3 that has a story about Lost Boys of Sudan. For 3 months, they walked hundreds of miles until they reached Ethiopia. Another non-related sentence is John Dang. By the way, they're all from the Dinka tribe, and many, Luol Deng, you know, from the Chicago Bulls, he's from that tribe also. Do you know the Chicago Bulls? Have you heard of Chicago? Is anybody here? Okay. Have you ever heard of Chicago? I mean, now that Michael Jordan is gone, maybe you've never heard of the Chicago Bills. Okay, John Dang never saw a supermarket until he came to the United States. So we have all of these time words, for, until, before, after. And a lot of an interesting part of the story is when some of them stepped into a stupor, they came from not only another country, they came from 200 years ago as far as how life was in that country. They had no electricity, plumbing, anything that you can imagine. And when they walked into a supermarket and the doors opened for them, oh, wow. And then they looked at, I mean, they had such scarcity, you know, and they looked at all the food. And somebody, I swear to God, I read this in an article, I think it was in Time or Newsweek, that said, he asked if it was the palace of the king of America. I mean, it's funny and it's touching all at the same time. So we have our time words from that story. Context can also be personal, and let me give you an example. For used to, I like to bring my high school yearbook to class and gross everybody out with my hairdo. I'm sorry? Oh, I'll show you very soon. Okay. You'll be sorry you asked. So I bring in used to, there I am. It's sort of like Leia, what is it, Leia, Princess Leia. Everybody says that's Princess Leia. I suppose that. Anybody want to guess the year? Guess a year. 60, you're close. 65 is the close, 64, it was 64. So I can bring in all the little things about 1964. I used to wear knee socks with penny loafers. Do everybody remember the penny loafers? I used to have a bouffant hairdo. I used to iron my hair. That was before they had those straight. We used like regular, you know, irons in there. And you encourage your students to bring in pictures of them when they lived in their countries, when they were younger, and they can talk about used to. Context can also give information about the United States. They're here, they're interested in the United States, and here are some of the ways we can do it. Well, we can talk about U.S. and about American cities. We have San Francisco, Chicago. I don't want to leave out your lovely New York, so I put that in there at the last moment. And what do you think we can teach from doing this? Give me an example of there is, there are.
There is a big bridge in San Francisco.
Good, okay, you can use it for there is, there are. There are tall buildings in New York. There is a lake in Chicago. Very good. Pass.
The bridge was built in 1889.
Okay, the bridge was built, and then you go to Wikipedia for when it was built, of course. Okay, I use it for comparative and superlative, but you are free to use it in any way you choose. Okay, and let me give you a website. Again, it's on your list. Bestplaces.net is a really cool website. It will compare 2 or more American cities, giving you cost of home, the kind of people who live there, the household income, the climate, the crime, education, health, transportation, and religion. Let me give you a web shot of this. This is what it would look like if you go there. You can ask your students to pick a city. Maybe they have a cousin who's living in Pittsburgh, or they're thinking of moving to Los Angeles because they're, I don't know, they get a job or they have a relative living there. You can put in, let's say we have here compare. Okay, you would click on compare. Let me show you this again in case anybody wasn't looking. You click on compare. You put a city here. You put another city here. And then you click compare, and you will get a comparison of 2 American cities. So you can start to talk about Chicago has more crime than Pittsburgh. Chicago is bigger than Pittsburgh. The housing in New York is probably more expensive than housing in Chicago. So you can compare on a number of different coordinates. You can compare 2 or more cities. So you can assign different cities to research to different students, and they can get together and have a comparison lesson with 2 cities, superlative lesson with more than 2. Of course, American holidays. And what do American holidays, what tense does that bring up for you? I would bring up simple, it could be future. It could be next week is Halloween. You could do it as future if it's a near thing. But basically, you're going to talk about what the customs of the holiday are. So I see it as a simple present tense lesson. Another thing I bring up for this is, for the United States, is jury duty. Students may or may not be interested. They may actually, if they're already citizens, be called for jury duty. Anything come to mind for you about jury duty? Modals, yes, you must do this, you can't do this, you should do this. Anything else? I use it for passive. Okay, and let me show you how I use it for passive. This is from the Chicago jury duty manual or online thing. What should I wear? You've got your modals in there. But you've also got a lot of passive voice in here. And I think, I love the part where it says, will I be paid? And it says, yes, you're paid. You will be paid. You will receive $17.20 per day. Boy, sign me up, okay? So you could, but yes, it does lend itself very, very well to modals, and it lends itself to passive voice. Also, current events. You've got your thing going on in New York here. You've got your Occupy Wall Street. Obviously, it's not in any of my books. It's just happening right now. What can you use it as? What can you use it for in your class? Present continuous, present, you know, they're carrying signs, they're marching on the street, they're shouting, you can do that. What did somebody say? They're texting? Oh, they're protesting. Yes, they're protesting. And then why are they protesting? What kind of signs are they carrying? So you have a nice present continuous lesson. You can even do this at a very, very low level. If you have beginning students, you can just do, she is angry. A man is behind a woman. You can do very, very simple things with this. And they get a sense of participating in what's going on right now in New York and in the United States. And I understand even internationally this is going on now. Okay, another thing that's very contemporary is Steve Jobs. I always say Jobs. And what does it bring to mind in terms of what kind of tense you could do? Unfortunately, it's past tense. You get a lot of past tense in there. Okay, you can bring in health and safety issues. What I've got is safe driving. And what does it call up for you in terms of grammar? Modals, okay. Do you text and drive? Can you text and drive? Should you text and drive? Why shouldn't you text and drive? What can happen if you text and drive? You've got a modal lesson right there, okay. I just threw this in because it's New York. Okay, you can also take the signs from the driver's book, and you can have a modals lesson, or you can have an imperative lesson out of that. Here is from Pennsylvania driving book, and it's all modals, a lot of modals in there. Again, you're emphasizing that must is the modal of more of a formal thing. There's also something fun. I don't know if we are going to have time. How am I doing on time back there? Good? Okay. All right. Let me show you some of the things I use. I use Mr. Bean a lot. Do I have the Mr. Bean cover over there? Yes. This is my favorite thing in teaching English. My absolute favorite. The vignettes are about 5 minutes long. I bought it in a package that's called The Whole Bean. There are three parts to this, and each part has many other subparts. And I find that you can do really good lessons on almost anything. In this case, I have an example of Mr. Bean. Is Mr. Bean stealing the Mona Lisa? Why is he looking over his shoulder? If I have time, I'll actually show you a Mr. Bean clip. By the way, nowadays, I noticed that you can and I put this on your handout, that Mr. Bean is also available on either on YouTube, or there's a Mr. Bean website, so you don't even have to buy this anymore. I paid $35 on Amazon. It was the best purchase I ever made in my teaching career. There's a website called, besides chalk and paper, okay. We have cuteoverload.com, and I want you to take a look at the following pictures and see what comes to mind in grammar. This picture, this picture. Okay. And you get prepositions. Let me go back through the whole thing. The chicken is that a chicken? The chick is next to the dog or near the dog. The chick is in the dog's mouth. The chicks are around the dog, and the chick is on the tractor, and you get a nice little, Cute Overload is a great, great, great website for really funny pictures. Here's another one I really love. I love vanity license plates, and I'll tell you how I use vanity license plates. Vanity license plates can teach how to use must for inference. Like if you look at the one from Michigan, you'd say this person, the owner of this car must be an educator, must be a teacher or an educator. If you look at the Ontario one, you say this person must be very impatient, must hate to wait. If you look at the Illinois license plate, it says this person must have a good sense of humor, this person must love to laugh. And I just kind of went through a whole bunch of them. And by the way, I love these. That's the Humvee we were talking about before. This person must be proud of the fact that this car doesn't get good gas mileage. What's the inference? This person must drive real fast, okay? What do you want to say about this person? This person must be a show-off, yeah. These are real, these are real. This person must be recently divorced, okay? Another thing I have is I use Dear Abby for, anyway, I'm going to mention once again, like if you just want to use my PowerPoint class, go right ahead, use it, adapt to it, add to it, do whatever you want with it, send for it, and I'd be happy to send it to you. I also use Dear Abby problems where students can do role play, and this often leads to modals like I think you should, I think you must, I think you can. It also is good for question formation because I have students write questions for the person who is going to role play the problem. So let's say somebody says, my wife is a lawyer here in New York, I'm an engineer, I got an offer to live to Washington. I ask students to write questions. How long have you lived in New York? What is the salary your wife is going to get? So they can practice question formation before they give their advice. And I'm almost there. Another thing is I use a lot of songs in class. I have a Heinle Cengage website where I have a list of, and I have, if I told you the website, it's one of those websites that have all kinds of like question marks and da 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 da, and they're very hard to type in accurately. So I have on the handout, just Google Cengage, Elbaum, Ask Author, and you will find that website. And I have a list of songs that correspond to various grammatical patterns. And for example, anything you can do, I can do better, will correspond to, I don't know if that's going to go, corresponds to comparisons, okay? And let me, going to visit her family in fill in the blank. Dominican Republic? Is that a good one? Oh, excellent, excellent choice, okay. And she has a dog, let's say she has a Chihuahua, and she is going to the airport, she's going to LaGuardia or JFK probably, and she says, this dog is very, very important to me. Please, I have to take this dog to the Dominican Republic, they said, no problem, lady. She gets on the plane, she arrives in the Dominican Republic, she has to go through customs, it's taking time. In the meantime, the baggage people open the box and they say, oh my God, the dog is dead. Oh, the woman is going to kill us. It's a brown Chihuahua, it's a female. There's a pet store nearby. Run to the pet store. We're going to get that Chihuahua, we'll put it in the box. She's never going to know the difference. Okay, so by the time she gets out of customs, they have the dog, they have the brown Chihuahua, male Chihuahua in the box, and they hand it to her. She opens the box and she says, this is not my Chihuahua. And she says, yes, it's your dog. She says, no, this is not my dog. He says, yes, it's yours. No, it's not mine. Yes, it's yours. No, mine was dead. I was bringing it to the Dominican Republic to bury it. Okay. So So you can take you can take possessive adjectives and possessive pronouns and make a lesson, and what you have is this nice little lesson. These walks just haven't been the same since Rex died, okay? So what I want to just wind up by saying is your grammar class is enriched and your students are empowered with collateral learning. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Thank you.
We have a couple minutes if you have some questions, or if you prefer, we can break and you can just come up and speak with her while maybe Mr. Bean is playing. But any urgent questions? Yes, go ahead.
Do you want to come up and speak at the microphone?
Wait.
Oh, we're going to pass the microphone to you.
Do you ever bother them with descriptive names like these are modals, or do you just do the whole lesson and figure they'll internalize it and that's enough?
I almost have to, you know. I like to put it in a category. If you can avoid it, I mean, so much the better. If you can get them to internalize it. Sometimes it's just helpful. But, you know, the problem is they say they went to work and they asked an American coworker, could you tell me how to use modals? And the American has never heard of it. So whatever works for you. I use the categories, but many people would rather they internalize it. Yes, we have a question back there?
Asking about the basic, how low, sorry, how low is basic?
Basic it's pretty low, and it deals mostly with survival skills. I
Okay.
wouldn't say it's a stark beginner. You might have to have a little, but it's over there. You can take a look and judge for yourself.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I was just going to ask, you don't tell them these are modals at the beginning levels. You would only do that at a higher level.
Yes, I would probably bring that up at a higher level. At a lower level, I mean, in the book, it has it as a category, but that can be mostly for the teacher, that the teacher can think of it in that category. Okay?
So I think we're going to break. Thank you so much, Sandy. That was wonderful.
Very
We're
welcome.
going home with so many great new ideas.